in Robinson's Medieval and Modern Times, page 7, it says the worship of the emperor. In a word, the Roman government was not only wonderfully organized, everyone was required to join in the worship of the emperor, who was, that's the sun cult, because he stood for the majesty and the glory of the dominion. All were obliged, as good citizens, to join in the sacrifices to the head of state as a god. And of course he identified himself with the sun god, whose birthday was December 25th. So what we see here is Rome's state religion continued on in the Roman Church. They adopted Rome's state religion in the Catholic Church, and then what they did was change these festivals. They don't call it Solstice Invictus anymore. They call it Christmas. They took all this paganism, dressed it up, and wrapped it with a big Christian bow, and present it as Christian when nothing could be farther from the truth. But these festivals go back even more farther back than Rome itself. Rome, of course, adopted this religion from the Babylonian religion, and that Sol Invictus, Mithra, was nothing more than Nimrod, who was the king of Babel, or Babylon. And, of course, that famous book, The Two Babylons, by Hislop, clearly shows that Christmas is indeed Babylonian. It says here, Christmas, a festival, was celebrated among the heathen at that precise time of the year in honor of the birth of the son of the Babylonian queen of heaven. The festival of Rome are innumerable, but 5 of the most important may be singled out. Christmas, Easter, all can be proved to be Babylonian, and that's on page 91 of The Two Babylons. So this story of the birth of the sun god goes back to Nimrod of Babylon. And this is where we find the origins of Christmas. If it had nothing to do with the early New Testament church, it had to come from somewhere. And history shows that it came from the Babylonian mystery religion. Now let's go take a commercial break, and we'll be back with more on this festival called Christmas. And how does God feel about some of these things that we call Christian? A lot of people say, well, we're doing it in honor of Jesus Christ, so how can God be upset with something like that? Is that true? Does God accept this kind of worship from his people? Let's go to commercial break. We'll be back with more on British Israel Radio, the nation's identity station.
With John and Liz Haywood.
There are so many times that I've sat with someone in my coaching experience and they've said to me, I love my mate, but I don't think I'm in love anymore.
As I think about what Jesus did for us all on the cross, I become aware that love is not necessarily a feeling, but it's an act of your will. Jesus made a decision to die for us. No amount of suffering or pain could have derailed him from his mission. When you said your vows on your wedding day, you accepted a mission to love your mate for the rest of your life.
Jesus said later on, you've lost your first love for me. You need to start doing the things that you did at first. And that same principle relates to our marriage. We need to go back to holding hands, opening the doors for one another, those kinds of things.
I think you'll find that as you start to do the things that love does, in time, the feeling of love will return.
Embrace marriage. There's more at embracemarriage.org.
All right, we're back here on British Israel Radio, the nation's identity station, talking to you about Christmas and its origins. Now, the origins, of course, go back to the Babylonian mystery religion, and eventually made its way towards Rome as Sol Invictus, and became, of course, the state religion of the Roman Empire. And, of course, the state celebrated December 25th as the birth of that sun god, who is Babylon, Nimrod, the king of Babylon. No, this is what how the original Christmas story goes. It says here that Nimrod, who married his own mother, that's how evil this guy was, whose name was Semiramis, who she became the queen of heaven, which the Bible speaks of in Jeremiah. It says that they baked cakes unto the queen of heaven. It says, after Nimrod's untimely death, his so-called mother wife, Semiramis, propagated the evil doctrine of the survival of Nimrod as a spirit being. She claimed a full-grown evergreen tree sprang overnight from a dead tree stump, which symbolized the springing forth unto new life of the dead Nimrod. On each anniversary of his birth, she claimed Nimrod would visit the evergreen tree and leave gifts upon it. December 25th was the birthday of Nimrod. This is the real origin of Christmas, and of course the connection of the Christmas tree with the birth of Nimrod. So this person named Semiramis wanted to perpetuate her son eternally by religion, and of course religion, is perpetuated from generation to generation. She wanted to perpetuate her son, called him the divine son of heaven. She was called the queen of heaven. She wanted to perpetuate this guy every year on his birthday, December 25th, by saying that he was reborn through an evergreen tree out of a dead stump, and his spirit would come and leave gifts underneath the tree on December 25th. Sound familiar? December 25th, every single year, we see presents underneath a tree. Did Nimrod leave them? No. We put them there. But we're perpetuating that same religion that Babylon started way back in the time of the book of Genesis. In Genesis, the 10th chapter, we see in verse 10, in verse 9, it says, rather in verse 8, Nimrod began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Eternal, where it was said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Eternal. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel. We all know about the Tower of Babel. Erech, Akkad, Calneh in the land of Shinar. Of course, that is modern-day Iraq, or Babylon. And then out of that land, Shinar, went forth Asher, and builded Nineveh, and the city of Rehoboth, and Calah. So here is the kingdom, the first empire, rather, of the ancient world, started by Nimrod. And he was a great and mighty hunter. When he died, his mother, which was also his wife, perpetuated Nimrod with his birthday, December 25th. His spiritual rebirth in an evergreen tree, and his spirit would leave gifts underneath that tree, December 25th. And out of this came Baal worship. You read constantly in the Old Testament about the groves, and Asherah, and Asherim, and these groves were, of course, as Kiddo says, connected with Baal. And Baal, of course, is Nimrod.